Let's put the spotlight on Lupin because this time the company's numbers have been quite good, quite strong, and definitely surpassing the street estimates. So let's understand more and know the outlook ahead. For this, we are being joined by the management itself, Vinita Gupta, CEO, and Nilesh, who is the MD, and Ramesh Swaminathan, Executive Director and CFO of the company, is joining us right now. A very good morning to all of you, and thank you so much for your time. Vinita, let me first come to you. Now, on your numbers, after single-digit growth in the US in the previous quarter, you have seen quite a good recovery in Q3. But what has led to this growth, if you can give us some more sense, and more importantly, is this growth sustainable?
Yeah, I would say that the US business throughout the fiscal year, quarter after quarter, has performed extremely well. In Q3 in particular, we had strong growth on new products like Mirabegron, as well as pretty strong growth in the inline products, on the revenue front. That helped us offset some, minor pressures on products like albuterol and Suprep. So it's been a solid quarter from a revenues perspective, but I'd say that we're very pleased with the trajectory quarter after quarter in terms of growth in the US, both in the revenues as well as margins.
Right. Vinita, so the full impact of Mirabegron was expected in the second half of FY25, right? How much of that impact has been absorbed this quarter itself? And the drug was also seeing very high channel inventory. Has that sort of eased?
Yeah, so we saw a good impact of Mirabegron in Q3 with the channel that was already full in Q2. So we launched the 50 milligram at the tail end of Q2. So you see the full impact of both the 25 milligram and 15 milligram in Q3, and still growing. Our market share in the product continues to grow.
All right. Nilesh, nice to connect with you. After outperforming the industry average, domestic business growth rates have been slightly skewed, or they have just inched a bit lower in last 2 quarters. When do you see that bottoming out?
Sure. As you know, in our India business, we separately reported our India region formulations business. That business grew at 9.1% for 9 months. So it's growing about 10% ahead of the market. The market basically is growing at 8%. So obviously, we would want the market to grow a little faster, and our aspiration is to grow 20 to 30% ahead of the market. From a therapy area perspective, I think the big challenge has been in respiratory, where the market is just not growing. And obviously, we're growing very marginally as well. We do expect this to bounce back. Vinita and I were talking, it's not like COPD has disappeared, right? So right now, obviously, there's much more cough, cold, and much more anti-infectives. But the inherent issues remain. And therefore, we are very optimistic of the respiratory space, especially the inhalation space. And we do believe that it will bounce back in the next couple of quarters. So next year, I think we should be back to double-digit growth, and we would see that continuing for the foreseeable future.
All right, but Vinita, last quarter, the company cited impact of higher competition, and there was a base impact as well on your overall sales. But help us understand, is that still the case now?
The base portfolio has been fairly strong, as I mentioned, with some impact of competition on albuterol, but still a strong contribution from albuterol. So good contribution from both base products as well as new product launches, contribution of products like Mirabegron.
Right. Vinita, how is the pricing in your base portfolio evolving right now? If you could just give some color on that.
So pricing has been low single-digit price erosion.
Sure. Ramesh, if I could get you in, margin was a big positive surprise for you this quarter. The company was guiding for upwards of 23 to 24% for the full year. Will you revise it further upwards?
The margin should not come as a big surprise because we guided for it. Firstly, the top line buoyancy is still being maintained. Secondly, we have always spoken about the kind of products that we have for the future. So from that perspective, it's business as usual insofar as we are concerned. Second, the focus on costs has been tremendous, and so there has been progress on that score as well. We have held costs on a tight leash for quite some time, and going forward, there are several initiatives for that as well. Third, the adjacencies, they're also growing, they're evolving, they're still making losses, but if you knock out that impact, you'd get a 2% surge there. So that would perhaps happen over time. Lastly, R&D expenditure, and that's a major factor in actually determining the margins. And that, in absolute terms, would certainly increase, whilst, of course, as a percentage of sales, it might be maintained at the same levels. So I would say margins, there are, of course, upsides possible because the Forex has been depreciating, but there are a lot of geopolitical tensions, moving parts, which could kind of upend that trend as well. So from my perspective, I would say, the margin should be anywhere between 22.5 to 23.5 going forward, at least for the next year or two. But over a 5-year period, I would say that the margins will certainly tend to be much higher than what you see today.
Sure. How is the geopolitical scenario impacting business globally?
At the end of the day, this is, we are in the business of affordable medicine. And from that perspective, I'm sure the US administration is also conscious of the fact that they wouldn't like to do something which will, upset the apple cart there. They are talking about actually imposing, reciprocal tariffs, so to speak. So that, of course, they will have to take into cognizance, in fact, the impact of, what it could potentially have in terms of prices as well. Remains to be seen. Like I said, too many moving parts. India is also reconsidering tariffs when it comes to imports from America. You've seen that in a couple of categories. The total quantum of imports for pharmaceuticals from America into India is on the lower side. So essentially, you need to see how all of these moving parts really pan out. What America really does, and of course how India responds and the like as well. So too early to kind of comment on it, but you're watching.
But Nilesh, Lupin has been inquiring and has been on the acquisition spree, and recently you acquired Humicelline from Eli Lilly, and also Lupin acquired 3 trademarks from Boehringer Ingelheim to strengthen the diabetes portfolio. But help us understand that how this will fuel the company's growth.
So both of those products were already captured in our inline. So the idea was really to secure them for the longer term. So both the insulin was already being booked in our sales. Obviously, there in the longer term, we would expect a margin expansion that would happen. Giptulio will go through loss of exclusivity, which will actually reduce the amount of sales. But again, the margin will increase substantially. And we would see it getting back basically to the current levels in the next 3-4 years. But I think both of these were very important products to add to our diabetes portfolio, and we're very happy that we've been able to add them.
Right. There are 2 warning letters which affected sites in Tarapur, Mandideep as well. What is the update on them? And also, what about the biotech facility in Pune?
Yeah. So on both Tarapur and Mandideep, we basically, we're ready for a re-inspection. I think we continue to keep doing enhancements to both sites. We do hope that the FDA will come sooner rather than later to both the sites. And we would hope with that to clear it and get back to that flawless record that we've had in the past. We had 5 sites which were non-compliant. We're down to 2. And hopefully we get these across the finish line in the next, 6-9 months as well. On the biotech, we had a response from the FDA, basis which we are responding, and there would likely be a re-inspection. But I think we're now close to getting approval for the site.
Right. Any timeline for this approval that you may be anticipating?
Likely in the second half of this upcoming fiscal.
All right, then, with this, we'll let you go on that. Thank you so much, Vinita, Nilesh, as well as Ramesh, for taking the time out and speaking with us.